Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at what is going on with Paldean Fates. It's been like 5 months since Paldean Fates came out. And what we've seen over the past kind of 5 months, and we are going to look pretty much at what's been happening since release here. We've seen a bunch of cards, a set of cards, so to speak, a category of cards, which are falling in price exactly as we might have expected and predicted. And we've got another category of cards, which is not, but actually makes perfect sense. So starting off then, if we have a look at the heavy hitters in the set, we might as well start off with Charizard, the heavy hitter in the set. And don't get me wrong, right? We have a look at TCG Player right now, and it's like $105, $110 card. There is a decent amount of value there. But essentially what happened was people were trying to get like $185 for it on release of the set. That little spike up is right when the set released. And then it fell down pretty quickly to like $110 and basically stayed there. We've seen no significant movement in price in the past 3 months. It's basically just sat there at about $110. And don't get me wrong, right? $110 is a lot for a Pokemon card from the Scarlet and Violet era. Very, very few cards in the Scarlet and Violet block have stayed above $100. So it is absolutely a card which is worth picking up. You'll be happy if you pull it from your pack. But we saw a big drop in price and then it stayed there and did not go back up. Mew, we saw basically the same thing. Big jump up to $135 on release. Fell down to about $75. And now it's basically, flicking around about $85-ish. So it has seen a modest recovery since the big drop. But we're talking about a modest recovery. Just like we saw with Charizard, the general trend of this card has been very clearly fall quickly. Recover a little bit, but mostly just fall quickly. That is what we see from the special illustration rare of Mew, which is good for people like me that love this card and haven't actually gone and picked it up yet, because maybe it'll keep going up over time, but right now that is not happening. We could look at Gardevoir, we see a similar kind of thing, jumped up to $70 on release, and it settled at about a $50 card. It is about $5 more than it was at its trough, at its lowest point, but generally speaking, went down, stayed down. This is what we see across the board for the cards that are supposed to be the heavy hitters from Paldean Fates. We see them falling down pretty quickly and staying down. And sure, you might get small recoveries like Mew or occasional recoveries like Gardevoir, but generally speaking, they're going down quite quickly. We could play this game with Ino that went up to nearly $70 on release and is now sitting nicely at about a $28 card. Although, to be fair, we do have the Ino from Paldean Fates, which is, for a lot of people, a better card. And there's just a lot to look at here and go, oh, yeah, no, okay, that's fine. People just aren't a big fan of this card, and that's okay. Maybe if it was the only Ino, it would be different, but it's not, so it isn't. And I'm going to show you one more here. How about Penny? Now, we need to look at the scale of this. There's only $9 between the top and the bottom of the y-axis here, but it's fallen from $23 down to like $14. A decent drop. But this penny, even though it has dropped like the others, this penny never really pretended to be an expensive card. It never really put on that facade. It was always supposed to be a moderately cheap card, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. So with all of that borne in mind then, the general big hitters here, the cards we expect to fall, have fallen quite nicely. They've fallen as we expected, and we have seen it go down and basically stay there. What's this other category that I'm talking about? What about these other cards which aren't following the same pattern? And we're talking here about playable shiny cards. The playable baby shinies are really starting to look pretty good. Now, it's not all playable ones. Sometimes it's just popular Pokemon, so Take Pikachu, started at $30, went down to $25. It's now rocking about $35. Not a huge spike there from Pikachu, admittedly, but enough for us to go, hang on a second, this has not gone down like all of the others. This one has retained a little bit of value. It's not massive, and it has gone up and then come down a little bit, but it's there. Same thing going on here with Snorlax, although we're more of a general upwards trend. Started at $15, went down to $12, and it's now rocking $15 to $20. It has taken a very recent dip, but overall we're talking about a general upwards trend here, which makes me, well, I mean, I like the Snorlax is getting some love, but I like Snorlax, but then again, that's the reason it's gone up. Snorlax is a cool Pokemon, and that is what's making these go up. It's not even the good Snorlax. It's not the Snorlax from Pokemon Go that sees a bunch of play. It's the one that gets leftovers back. So what about some of the others? How about your Charmander? Now, Charmander's a bit of a weird one, because Charmander is absolutely playable, but there are a bunch of different Charmander that can be used here. But generally speaking, this is actually the best one. It's got 70 HP, it can discard a stadium. Mostly it's got 70 HP. 70 HP, single retreat. It's not a great card, but it does also have steady fire breathing, 2 energy, 30. I'm not saying it's good, but I am saying if you're being blocked by something like a Mimikyu, more on that in a minute, maybe this gives you not a good answer, but maybe an answer. And you'll notice it jumped up to $25 and it's holding on around about $22. Not a huge jump, but it's going up. Bearing in mind, all the quote-unquote big cards of the set have come down pretty dramatically. To see these going up at all is pretty important. We see a similar thing from Charmeleon. Now, generally, Charmeleon is only ever played as a one-of. It would be unusual to see more than one in a Charizard deck list. There isn't usually room for more than one. But when you play one Charmeleon, it tends to be this one. And that means that we've got the combination of decent card, but also popular Pokemon. It's a stage 1, but it's still part of the Charizard line, right? So, you know, it's down to like $15 on release, and it's now, you know, goes up to $23, and it's now somewhere around the $20 card, although what's the recent sales? That near mint is a Japanese version, incidentally, and there's a damaged one there, so don't read too much into the recent sales. It's about a $20 card. We've seen a decent jump. But we've also got a bunch of these that are just playable. They're not particularly good, they're just playable. And we see these ones going up nicely. Pidgey has been as high as $22. Now it's currently sitting at about $14, but there's a recent sale for $19. And Pidgey, by all rights, should end up being a not particularly valuable card. Like, nobody really likes Pidgey. I don't want to be rude here. Nobody really likes Pidgey. I'm sure there's a couple people out there that have Pidgey as their favourite Pokemon, but I would wager they are in the minority. But this is the best Pidgey to evolve into Pidgeot. And Pidgeot sees a bunch of play right now. Pidgeot is a very, very, very good card. And then we end up going, oh, okay then. Maybe this is actually legit. Maybe this ends up being good, not necessarily because people like Pidgey or any of that rubbish, because actually Pidgeot is really good, and this is our preferred basic. We've got Mimikyu. Mimikyu's quite popular, don't get me wrong, but Mimikyu's got Safeguard, and Safeguard is a great ability. Stops damage from EXs and Pokemon Vs, so we see that it dropped down to $9.50, and it's up to like $12. And the graph seems like it's going up. Remember, when we're talking about small values, obviously the jump is also going to be pretty small, but it's incredibly relevant that random shiny Pokemon, and like I'm saying, they're not actually random, but you know what I mean, 1 out of 130 they each are, they're jumping up in price while all the heavy hitters in the set are just going down, going down, going down. And we see a similar thing here with Drifloon, which of course is a popular card to play in Gardevoir decks, where it's a $2 card, and in any other set, the random shiny Drifloon would be a $2 card, and is now up at a $10 card. Also worth noting, you see a pretty massive jump there. Remember, Gardevoir is a good deck. And Gardevoir has periods of nobody cares and then periods of intense hype. So that does explain why we see Drifloon jumping up at times. Because actually, yeah, Gardevoir's a pretty good deck. And we end up with a couple of different categories of cards. Your big hitters like your Charizard, your Mew, your Rhino, they started off pretty high, and then everybody basically realized that Paldean Fates was readily available. There's no shortage whatsoever, and there's just no value being attributed here, and they go down, down, down. Whereas your random shiny Pokemon, they might still be cheaper overall, but they are creeping up, and I would expect this to keep happening. Any of these cards that end up playable, I would expect them to keep creeping up over time, because people are going to be picking them up for their decks, and the pull rates for the individual shinies are quite low. Remember, there are many of these little shiny Pokemon, as I like to call them. They are numerous in the set. I'm just doing a little bit of a calculation here, trying to figure out exactly how many there are. There's 120 in the set proper, exactly 120. Which means even when you pull a shiny Pokemon, which won't happen in every pack by a long shot, but even when you pull a shiny Pokemon, you got a 1 in 120 chance of getting the one you want. A less than 1% chance of actually picking up the one that you want. That is part of the reason why we are seeing this happen. There's plenty of these little shiny Pokemon right now that are attracting basically no value because nobody really cares, and that's fine. But there are going to be plenty of these, well, right now I've just shown you a bunch, but also plenty more in the future, where they all of a sudden become playable, and at the moment they become playable, there's going to be a bunch of people to go, oh, well, hang on a second. Maybe I should be picking some of these up. For now, I want to know your experiences of Paldean Fates. I want to know which of these cards you've picked up, which are the ones you've pulled from the set. I want to know anything you want to tell me, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @LeWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel, like the lovely Dojo, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and seems to be a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.